we had to make a wish list before the Sony WF-1000XM4s were released, every single change that Sony made would be on it.
But it's one thing to look at a spec sheet and quite another to really use and test these buds, which is what we've done. Let's see if reality makes or breaks your purchase decision.
Goedendag, we're DHRME.
Delectable.
Headphones.
Resonate.
Musical.
Excellence.
Alright, we've had these buds for about a week now and finally feel comfortable making a review about it. We've published some microphone and ANC tests as well as sound samples in the meanwhile. Take a look at those after this video to hear the differences for yourself.
Alright, we're gonna run through our A, B, C, D, E, F list in no particular order because heck, if Sony has password-like names for their devices, then we should be allowed some chaos too.
Let's start with the B for build quality, since Sony's made some big changes here with a 40% reduction in the case size, bringing it up to par with modern earbuds, and a 10% reduction in bud size. This helps make these buds portable and pocketable and kills all the bulgy jokes we've made. Not cool, Sony. Anyway, we'll always have the Bose. What's also new in the build quality is an IPX rating, which means you will be fine for light sweat during workouts and a splash of rain or two. It's not quite a sport earbud like the Bose Sound Sport or the Jabra Elite Active 75T, but it's much better than having no IP rating at all, like the XM3. It also comes with hybrid foam tips that should give you a better seal. Should.
On comfort, this is where things kind of fell apart for me. I struggled with these tips, I'll be honest. This is also why we take longer to do a real review. You see in the first few hours with the product that there's a certain bias that you have to be aware of. And I was super excited when I got this product. But once I used these for more than a few hours a day, that excitement waned. My left ear started hurting when I used the medium tips, and the small tips didn't give me sufficient seal. Surprising, since I thought that foam tips would actually solve the problem of comfort versus seal. What do you think?
I also suffered from the same bias and was certainly excited about foam tips, and initially the medium size felt okay, but then same thing, they were not very comfortable, and after a few hours and they didn't stay in my ears as well as I'd hoped. After switching to the small tips, it improved a lot, better fit and less pain, but I did still feel them in my ears. What I was mostly surprised with was how they still had an occlusion effect, and especially noticed this when moving around, talking, or setting them in ambient mode. Now look, you can always add third-party accessories, but we have to review the product we got, and what you get in the box are 3 sizes of foam tips. My experience changed drastically when I used third-party tips, but no one but the most enthusiastic audio folks, we're looking at you guys, are gonna do that. But don't take our word for it. Here's a banana test.
Now coming to D for design, we like how the design looks, and as Sony always does, they're available in 2 different colors, black and beige. Not too flashy and more timeless than bright colors that look great on day 1 and embarrassing a year later. We also like how they've weaved in the ANC mic as a design element front and center. It's distinctive looking. The profile of these buds is smaller, but they're certainly not tiny like the Galaxy Buds Pro, and they do stick out a bit, at least in our ears. The case has an LED status light, but Sony's left out the LEDs on the buds themselves.
And we for one couldn't be happier with that decision. If you've ever tried to use the XM3 in the dark, you'd know what we're talking about. And surprise, the case can also stand on a table. Good to see Sony making those little tweaks. The battery life is solid, and in our test, Sony's claims bore out. 8 hours is nothing to sneeze at in this form factor and with this much tech packed in. In addition to USB-C, Sony also managed to squeeze in wireless charging this time, which is a welcome addition. You control these buds using touch, and that's ever so slightly more responsive than the XM3's. And these can be customized in the app.
Which brings us to E for extras. Sony's Headphones Connect app works with Android and iPhone and is still fully customizable. The touches can be customized, but it's a shame that you can only choose 2 control schemes. So you can't have ambient sound control and playback control and volume control. Might seem like a small thing, but for me it's huge. Having swipe volume controls always available is important, whether it be music or phone calls. We'll get to those in a bit, but the XM4 still has all the goodness of the XM3s and is one of the most feature-rich earbuds on the market. It inherits the new headlining speak to chat feature from the over-ear XM4. Works well if you want to automatically pause music and hear someone else, not so well if you're a sing-alonger, or a sneezer, or a cougher.
Or a toothbrusher. What? You don't listen to music while brushing your teeth? Come on guys, back me up in the comments. But this feature can be disabled, so that's good. And if speak to chat is too fancy for your taste, then Sony's got your FOMO needs covered by supporting Smart Pause, which will pause your audio if you take out an earbud and resume it when placed back. An omission here is the lack of multi-point, which means you can only be connected to one device at a time, and manual switching between devices is required if you wield more than one phone or laptop. And the Sony Headphones Connect app has a ton of options when it comes to A for audio. That's ANC and sound quality. Starting with ANC, with adaptive sound control, it can automatically determine whether you're traveling, walking, or sitting, and adjust ANC accordingly. You can also easily customize ANC in the app and switch between modes using the touch surface. A nice little touch this time around is that Sony remembers your last ANC setting, whereas on the XM3, it used to always reset to full ANC. You can still customize the level of ANC in the app using the slider. Yes, a slider with 20 stops on it. Not 3, 5, or even 10, but 20. Yeah, I guess Sony really took the password theme very seriously. The longer, the better. And when it comes to ANC, Sony touted industry-leading ANC. So we put them to the test in our sound and ANC comparison tests. Link above and in the description. And yes, they've improved for sure compared to their predecessors and most of the earphones on the market. But then there's the number one, that chunkalicious, bulgelicious Bose Quiet Comfort earbuds. Now, don't get us wrong, if you're listening to music even at very low volumes, you're probably not going to even notice the difference. So noise cancelling is very good for blocking out most sounds.
But we are talking about €280 or dollar earbuds, so we have to pit these against the best. In terms of ambient mode, it works well and you can hear your environment, but still not as natural sounding as the AirPods Pro. And then there's wind noise cancelling. Sony advertised this heavily in their videos, but here's the thing, Sony's had wind noise cancelling since forever. It was just buried deep in the settings. Now this might just be our unit or a temporary bug, but the wind noise reduction on the XM4 did absolutely nothing, whereas on the XM3 you notice a clear difference, at least in the wind, but at the cost of overall ANC. But we know that Sony has the tech, so we hope that this will work well with firmware updates. And when it comes to sound, Sony's packing all the tech your heart could desire.
And what these techies' hearts really desire is having you guys show us some support for the hard work we put into making these videos for you. The description box includes a couple of ways you can do that. And if you happen to get lost on your way to the description box, then you might want to hit that like button. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. In terms of connectivity, we did have some minor Bluetooth issues with Mac, even after the latest update, but you know this is Sony. I'd be shocked if this wasn't fixed quickly, so let's not dwell on it. The Android Fast Pair works excellently to get started. We also tested this with 2 Samsung phones and 2 iPhones. The TLDR is that these sound very good with a couple of buts.
Okay, let's start with DSE Extreme. It's supposed to make your poorer quality music sound better by using AI magic. I tested this by converting a couple of music files to 64 kbps MP3 files on Android, and to be honest, I didn't really hear any difference. But on the iPhone with Spotify, I could hear a very slight announcement on the higher frequencies. Your mileage may vary.
Like the over-ears, you can send Sony pictures of your ears. No, it's nothing naughty. It just helps configure the 360 reality audio, which is actually pretty immersive if you have access to it. Now, Android supports LDAC and iPhones only AAC, but these sound as good as any other buds on iPhones. So if you're an iPhone user, don't worry about that whole LDAC bit.
Volume junkies won't be disappointed, these get plenty loud. Now, we've generated some preliminary frequency response curves for you guys, so looking at the curve, it matches our opinion. These have a warm sound. But frequency curves aren't everything. Just to give you a comparative idea against the best sounding buds on the market, I was listening to Joe Bonamassa's When One Door Opens. On the Sony, the most audible instrument is the bass guitar and the bass drum. On the Galaxy Buds Pro, it's the electric guitar, and on the Momentum True Wireless 2, it's just kind of everything. The Sony could be called the most punchy, the Buds Pro the clearest and most fun, and the Sennheiser the most smooth. If you ask me purely for sound at medium volumes, I'd choose the Galaxy Buds Pro. Look, I'll admit my bias, I prefer real instruments, drums, guitars, that sort of thing. But even for EDM, the Galaxy Buds Pro can handle the sub bass without getting bloated and not veiling the higher frequencies. Whereas the Sony's sound, you guessed it, is much warmer. The advantage of this is that the Sony sound much less fatiguing at higher volumes, whereas the brighter Buds Pro treble can tend to grate on you if you're treble sensitive. Purely for vocal tracks, I still like the Sennheiser Momentum True Wireless 2s due to their natural presentation of the voice's timbre. In terms of soundstage, I thought the XM4 was decently wide. However, there were times when I thought there were holes in the imaging. For example, at the beginning of Michael Jackson's Thriller, there are footsteps that kind of walk from the right to the left. On the XM4 compared to the Buds Pro, I could still feel that, but the transition was less smooth compared to the Buds Pro.
Of course, on the Sonys, you have a 5-band EQ and a bass slider for tuning the frequency response to your preference. And after some tweaking, we did get close to the Galaxy Buds Pro. Now we hear a lot of you say, hey, but these have LDAC, isn't that the best audio codec?
It's a great technical achievement from Sony for sure. But look, if we can't hear the difference using FLAC files or even 320 kbps MP3s on the latest and greatest Android phones, then that's what we've got to say. When the AirPods Max were released, it blew our minds because even though they use the AAC codec, to our ears, they outperform the over-ear XM4 with LDAC. With AAC coming to Windows later this year, that might just become the de facto standard. Now, if you can hear the difference that LDAC brings to the table, more power to you. Codecs give you high theoretical maximums, but it's a combination of factors: driver size, driver type, DSP, your own hearing limitations, and the fit that give you the final sound. And based on that, we think that Sony has done very well here with all the nuance that we've added for this.
And in keeping up with the chaotic order, we'll move on to C for calls before we give the buy or not to buy rundown. We're not going to be influenced by Sony's marketing here, bone conduction sensor, beamforming. The tech sounds cool, but we're simple folks. We just test and go by the data. Simple, no? Call quality on the XM4 is fairly good, but the XM3s have improved drastically over time, so this is not a surprise to us. We did a complete microphone test comparing them to 5 other flagship earbuds, linked above and down below. Now, the XM4s do not come with some bells and whistles like being able to mute calls from the earbuds or adjust how much of your own voice you hear on a phone call. And sure, the Bose cancels out background sound better, and the Galaxy Buds Pro wind reduction is superior. But in terms of volume and clarity, while these are not top-notch, they are very usable, and we can no longer dunk on Sony for being bad at phone calls. Good job, Sony. Pop pop popsicle, ice ice icicle, test test, testing, 1 2 3. Pop pop popsicle, ice ice icicle, test test, testing, 1 2 3.
Before we give you our verdict, let's round it up with future-proofing and fixability. We are happy to see that Sony has almost completely eliminated plastic from the latest packaging. At their scale, that makes a difference. We didn't get a clear answer on recyclable materials used in the buds though. But like all true wireless earbuds these days, there are no replaceable batteries, and that means you will have to take them to Sony for repair once the batteries no longer hold charge.
Now, the big question, should you get these earbuds? You might have thought that we were way too critical on the XM4s, but we've said it before and we'll say it again, 280 euros or dollars is a lot of money for earbuds. In this day and age, you can get a little less for a lot less. Budget earbuds are really competing, and companies like Earfun, One More and the like give you many of these features at a fifth or a third of the price. Even Sony's own XM3 still remains a fantastic choice with most of the features if you can get past its size and design. And if you're an audiophile who's purely in it for the sound, there are cheaper, fantastic wired options out there. So depending on what you want, you can save a lot of money.
So who's this for? If you like Sony's earbuds and are itching to get something new, you probably wouldn't bother about what we have to say anyway. So go ahead and use those links in the description. It'll help out the channel at no additional cost to you. If you're getting these purely for LDAC, then yes, not many buds out there have that. As a complete and solid package, it's a very attractive choice.
A modern design, an IPX4 rating, great noise cancelling and sound, packed to the gills with extras and very usable microphones. If the tips work for you and you don't mind the multi-point omission, it means you really can't go wrong with the excellent Sony WF-1000XM4. But if you want just good enough sound, good enough ANC, good enough battery, and well, you get the picture, you can get a little less for a lot less.
You've been inspired to strengthen your passwords.
And we've been DHRME.
Namaste.